So let's break down how changes to this H-1B visa program might affect Canadian tech workers. To do that, I want to bring in immigration lawyer David Garson. We have reached him in Toronto. Thank you for taking the time with us, David. To start with, can you just walk us through what exactly is an H-1B visa and why is it so controversial right now?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. So an H-1B visa is for an individual who is clearly professional in a specialty occupation. And it's been around for decades. I mean, realistically speaking, the H-1 has provided a lot of support for U.S. companies, not just in the tech sector, but in every sector. And realistically, over the last several years, they put a cap on these types of visas. So there's a 65,000 cap, and there's a 20,000 extra to that cap if you're here or you're there, in a master's program. So it's nothing new. But the point of the matter is that there are far more applications under the H-1 category than get selected, because every year there's sort of an H-1 lottery. And hundreds of thousands of people want to get into the United States in H-1 status, and only 65,000 are taken. So it could be 20% or 30%. And that's been going on for a long time. So this isn't anything new, realistically. I think what's going on now, though, is that because the new incoming administration has taken a stance on immigration, and so their base is saying, wait a minute, how can you let these people in when you've told us you're going to protect America First policy? But they're not doing anything new or different. They're just kind of continuing what's been going on.
So say I'm a Canadian tech worker who wants to work for a big company in Silicon Valley, or a student who's applying for jobs at those kinds of companies. How does this conflict or potential changes affect me?
Well, as a Canadian, you're kind of lucky because you have the free trade agreement, what the U.S. calls the USMCA. We used to call it NAFTA, and Canada calls it CUSMA. So as a person who's Canadian, you can take advantage of the USMCA, and you can go into the United States under the free trade agreement. For instance, if you're a systems analyst, if you have a degree in mathematics or systems analysis or anything related to technology, you could possibly get a work permit under that so you can avoid the H-1. And that's important. Or you're an engineer, you can avoid the H-1, or an economist or an accountant, you can avoid it. So it's more helpful for you as a Canadian than it would be, let's say, if you were someone from India or someone from China or anywhere else. So we have it better than a lot of other people. Let's put it that way. Big picture,
though, David, isn't that whole program, what we used to call the new NAFTA, has to be renegotiated anyway? So there's uncertainty on the H-1 factor, but then also, what do we know about what will happen to those other visas you were mentioning?
No, it's an excellent point. It doesn't have to be renegotiated, but certainly the incoming president has mentioned that he wants to renegotiate it. I can only say this. In his last administration, he did renegotiate what was then called the NAFTA. He didn't touch the immigration provisions. He renegotiated a lot of things for, Canadian trade, but he didn't touch the immigration provisions. That isn't to say he's not going to do that going forward. From an experience point of view, though, I kind of doubt he's going to tack the immigration provisions of the free trade agreement right now. I think what he's going to do is he's concentrating on people who are illegal in the United States, and he's concentrating on his tariffs and all that kind of thing. So I don't know that we're the biggest fish he wants to fry. But to your point, it is something that we have to consider, because if he does renegotiate a NAFTA or the CUSMA or the USMCA, and he takes it away, then yes, then we are subject to this H-1 visa cap and whatever that entails.
The whole conflict here seems to be because some people in the MAGA movement are arguing that the H-1B visas take jobs away from American workers. But are there enough Americans to fill these jobs in these sectors?
No. No, I mean, the short answer is no. I mean, it's a kind of what we used to call, when I was young, a shaggy dog tail. I mean, it's just something that is put out there so that people can argue about. But realistically speaking, no. And as I said, it's only 65,000, another 20,000 for people who are in master's programs. And there's like hundreds of thousands of jobs that need filling. So like most things in immigration, it's become sort of a lightning point. It's become something that we can discuss politically, but has nothing to do with the economic policies of the day or the social policies of the day. It just has to do with people getting elected and people making arguments and people getting angry. But for all intents and purposes, it really doesn't matter.
So given that we're seeing this play out politically with Elon Musk and Steve Bannon going back and forth, how do you anticipate that this is going to play out in the next several weeks or months?
Well, that's an excellent question. I don't think Steve Bannon has a lot of say in this government. I think he probably thinks he represents a lot of the people that voted for the incoming president. But I think President-elect Trump is depending a lot on Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk to dictate these types of situations. So I think what may happen is everything stays the same, meaning nothing changes in that regard. I think that it would be I would find it unusual if they changed the H-1 category to make it less effective or to limit the number of H-1 visas. I think for the most part, things are just going to go on as they're going on. And this is sort of just another road that people are going to travel down until they figure out something else to travel down.
We got to leave it there, Mr. Garson. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was immigration lawyer David Garson. He joined us from Toronto.